Hello and welcome. The continuous standoff between India and China in Ladakh shows no sign of ending anytime soon. In the next 4 months, summer will be upon us across India and also along the border, both in Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, and in Ladakh. So, what is the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force going to do during the summertime, which is going to be a major threat from the Chinese, given that the weather is much more friendlier? And what is the role that the Indian Air Force and particularly the advanced landing grounds in Arunachal Pradesh play when India wants to move in larger forces and reinforcements into that sector of the McMahon line, which is the line of actual control with China? That's the focus on Simply Nitin this week. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So while the focus so far since May 2020 has been on Ladakh, the Indian military planners assess that the new threat from China may come in the eastern sector, which is comprising of Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim particularly. Now, the area of Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim are much more difficult in terms of operations, in terms of logistics, in terms of deployment, given the typical topography that exists in that area. Unlike Ladakh, the jungles exist in Arunachal Pradesh. The climb is steep, and in many places in Arunachal Pradesh, India's infrastructure leaves a lot to be desired even today. Despite what the Border Roads Organization and the Army's operational works has been doing for the past couple of years and even for a decade now. Now, because of that peculiar infirmity in the infrastructure and the gaps that exist in terms of deployment, the role of the advanced landing grounds that exist all along the border in Arunachal Pradesh becomes much more important for insertion of troops, for supplies, and keeping the logistics chain open. Now, what are advanced landing grounds? They are small strips of airfields which are located strategically along some of these valleys, which are important for defenses of Arunachal Pradesh, which of course used to be called NEFA at one time, Northeast Frontier Agency. Now, these 8 of the advanced landing grounds, 7 of the 8 advanced landing grounds have been upgraded, have been revamped, and have been reinforced in the past 6 years or so by the Indian Air Force, exactly because of this reason, anticipating trouble in Arunachal Pradesh. They are at Vijayanagar, Walong, Tooting, Zero, Pasighat, and Mechuka. The Tawang advanced landing ground is not yet ready, but these 7 are ready. And they play an important role because the transport fleet of the Indian Air Force, which of course comprises of the old workhorse AN-32s and now the newly inducted C-130 and C-17 aircraft which have been bought from the US. These airfields allow these transport aircraft to land, to carry troops, carry supplies, carry ammunition when required in double quick time. Because none of these areas are otherwise well connected by road. Some of them are, of course, but let's take example of the Vijayanagar advanced landing ground, which is on the tri-junction of India, Myanmar and China. If you look at the map, you will know where exactly that location is. Now, it's a remote area. The nearest town is 2 days walk away, and it takes 6 days from Namdapha Reserve Forest in Arunachal Pradesh, if you're walking, to get to Vijayanagar. Now, Vijayanagar was identified way back in the early 60s as an important post of the Assam Rifles, and retired Assam Rifles personnel, mostly Nepalese who had retired from the Assam Rifles, were taken there with their families to be settled there as a buffer on the border against any ingress from the Chinese side. Since then, they have been living there. Of course, there are local tribes, the Lisu tribes, who also live in that area. They've lived together. Vijayanagar has a population of about 7,000 people, and they are completely dependent upon the Indian Air Force for taking them to the nearest airfield or the airport, which is Dibrugarh in Assam. Now, twice a month, one civilian sortie of the AN-32 comes to Vijayanagar from Dibrugarh and takes back people if they want to go to Dibrugarh. They are charged about 1,000 rupees, heavily subsidized tickets by the Indian Air Force, which is paid for by the Directorate of Supply and Transport of the government of Arunachal Pradesh. This is the only town you can call, or a small settlement in Arunachal Pradesh, which is still air maintained. Most of the other villages and other towns and other settlements are now connected by road. But Vijayanagar continues to be air maintained because making the road there is still difficult, and people have not been able to get to Vijayanagar by road. Now, what happens over the years, because of this settlement and the Assam Rifles post, the Air Force has now got a routine. Thrice a month they take their own sortie, where personnel are turned over. Assam Rifles personnel going on leave can avail that flight. The civilians, of course, can avail that flight. In fact, there is a joke in Vijayanagar that while the child grows up, children grow up in Vijayanagar, they only know about the aircraft or different types of aircraft, but they've never seen a railway engine or a railway line, or even a four-wheeler. Four-wheeler, of course, they see because Assam Rifles has some four-wheelers there, but they've never sat in the four-wheelers. They straight away sit into the aircraft after they are born. Sometimes they are born in Dibrugarh and brought back on the aircraft to Vijayanagar. That's the peculiarity of that area. Now, moving away from Vijayanagar, what do these ALGs give to the Indian Air Force? It allows the Indian Air Force to support any Indian Army operation when they want to insert troops into these remote areas. They want to insert troops rapidly. If reinforcements have to be brought in, then these airstrips, the ALGs, help do that job swiftly. That is something that the Indian Air Force and Army has planned over the years, and that plan is now well in place. Why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because in the summer months, starting from May, there's a likelihood that the Chinese might up the ante in the eastern sector, especially in eastern Arunachal Pradesh, in Walong and that area where India's defenses have been traditionally weak. The LAC is not reachable by road yet in many places. It takes about 7 days of foot patrolling. Long-range patrols have to go to some of these places, and therefore the Chinese might just come and create some mischief there, is the apprehension. And therefore, Indian military planners are now looking at the east much more closely than they are looking at the other sectors. Ladakh, of course, is well poised to take on any challenge, as we know since May 2020, the standoff that is still a military stalemate. But Arunachal Pradesh might be the focus in the summer months. Now, these ALGs, as I mentioned, have been there for nearly 50 years, but they were not well maintained. It was difficult to maintain them. It was difficult to take construction material there. And of course, it wasn't seen as very cost-effective method to carry troops or supplies or rations. But now, because of the exigencies, because of the requirement, these ALGs will come in very handy. And of course, the Air Force is, preparing for the hot summer months. They have already moved a lot of infrastructure support to the eastern sector, or have strengthened the infrastructure support there. And when required, the fighter aircraft and the transport aircraft can be just switched from central sector or from the western sector to the eastern sector when required. That's what the Air Force is planning. Over the years, this has improved. I remember going to Vijayanagar in 2003. You can see these photographs when my friend that time, Wing Commander Tarun Singha, who was the public relations officer of the Indian Air Force in Eastern Command, had facilitated a media trip to these areas and to these ALGs. It was a once-a-lifetime experience because one could never get there unless you wanted to spend 7 days in walking one way and then coming back for 7 days by trekking back to the mainland, if you want. But he allowed and he facilitated, along with his senior officers, to for us to go there. We saw firsthand the difficulty in landing at Vijayanagar and other ALGs. Vijayanagar and all the other ALGs are based or located between two steep mountains, and the cloud cover is very thick. Unlike in Ladakh, the weather in Arunachal Pradesh is monsoon weather during those summer months, and therefore the cloud cover sometimes can be so thick that the pilot cannot see the airstrip till the last moment before he has to land. The airstrips are not too long. They are less than half the length required for big aircraft to take off. But the pilots are so skillful that they land there and they, of course, carry out the operation. So when we went there, we found that the population is completely dependent on the Indian Air Force, and it still continues. Although the government of Arunachal Pradesh and Indian Air Force have done many new things of late. They revived Vijayanagar again. There you'll see some of the photographs from 2019, where the Eastern Command Air Chief or the CNC Eastern Command and the Eastern Army Commander went there together, and they, of course, sort of opened the revamped airfield there. But the fact is, Arunachal Pradesh still remains a difficult area to reach, and therefore, India has to be watchful in the coming months when the Chinese might create some kind of a diversion there, or maybe create some kind of a standoff. Of course, the Army and the Air Force are alert, but that is something that we have to watch out for. And I thought I'll just give you a small slice of history or small slice of the unknown facets of Arunachal Pradesh and the borders in the eastern sector. That's all I have for you this week in Simply Nitin. We'll keep coming back to you with more unknown facets, interesting anecdotes and episodes. You keep watching this, and of course keep liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. And if you like our work, if you like our inputs that we give you, do support us financially, because this kind of journalism takes a lot of doing, and of course we need any support that you can give us. Until the next time, it's goodbye.